usually are most familiar with, right, that are in the States, in Canada, band councils and tribal councils. And, a part of this has to do with the difference in nepotism, right? Protections against nepotism actually in the matrilineal protocols, when it comes to introductions of yourself and clan designations and these type of things. Also perceptions of corruption in terms of passing down title. So these type of things, these protections against this, things that we would normally associate with hereditary nepotism in European monarchies, or even in the tribal or band council structures that are no longer have these matrilineal protocols intact. They've adopted a lot more more modern democratic structures for their organization. So these clan designations lose their function, right, in the system design, because they're no longer using a matrilineal system design, right? So this is important, and the mapping of under the protection is important for actually the preservation of identity, which is, it's counterintuitive, right? Because you would imagine that there would be some ostracization when some person is introducing themselves as adopted by Wolf Clan. Somebody is their mother was Wolf Clan, right? So they're not adopted; they're born Wolf Clan, right? But it's actually a preservation from whatever nation that person was adopted from, a preservation of that identity, so that no matter how many generations down the line into the territories that these people that may be refugees from warring nations and beside these territories or what have you, right? No matter how many generations they have to stay in these territories, their cultural nuances stay intact because of this this preservation of identity built in, right? There's also further nuances of alignment, right, and nuances of rights to particular land or territories, right, that become important, right, when it comes, especially when settler colonialism comes into the picture, right? And that's another story. But the way that this becomes relevant for Web3 ecosystems, I think, is in mapping and alignment as well, right? Particularly for naming bridge work and onboarding processes, and critically analyzing these processes, right? But also ensuring that there's clear line of accessibility to voices being heard and horizontality being felt. And this is huge for transformative potential as well, right? But this is not just under the protection. There's refugee status. There's adopted status that I mentioned too. Hung about the neck is the reference because of the necklaces or beads with the particular clan designation embedded into it somewhere, being a part of that particular process, right? So that's a reference to adoption. And so there's these different nuances that we can also take advantage of for our own mapping and for our own tracking of alignment, tracking of work we need to do for bridge work into the system, and these type of things. So that we don't have to wing it, right? Along with some of the governance structures that, I think it's a pretty unique thing to say that, not only, that hard thing to do, not fall into, structures that we're most familiar with, right? That's we're somewhat pulling that off, right, already, right, with the tooling that we have, and as we continue testing with the clan system, we're pulling it off even more so because it's, directly, from these matrilineal protocols, right? But it makes sense because we're somewhat familiar with it from the diluted democratic structures we live and work in, right? But so this is interesting and exciting stuff to get into the weeds on, right? So I hope some of that made sense, Hero. But I think it's important for you, right? Because you're one of the particular voices that I'm always impressed with your mapping. Right? I'm always impressed with your ability to zoom out a little bit further than us that may have been in the ecosystem for some time now, right? And you're like, well, look, there's all these different definitions of community, right? And I think you're right in that it's important to keep track of the morphologies, right, of all of these different aspects of community, and ensure that there's balance and sustainability, access designed into the system, right? And so this is, I think, one of the ways we can do so without having to start from scratch. So thank you kindly, Merrick, for touching on that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I think I understood like maybe 70% of it. But as I learn more, I'm sure I will get more percentage. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
thank you for explaining.
Yeah, and I think there's some more concrete examples to the Web3 space that are available, but I think it will take some more deep diving into those different statuses, right? Because obviously, maybe refugee status does make sense in the Web3 space to some extent, right? Maybe you get burned in another community or another ecosystem somewhere, right? Or maybe adoption is another this sense, right? In terms of folks coming into advocates, but also as many folks do have histories in other ecosystems or backgrounds, disciplines, these type of things. Maybe maybe we can make this make sense in that way, right? But yeah, I understand, the 70%, but I'm happy with that number. I get real nervous at the end of those rants, but I think it all was relevant.
It's
Yeah.
funny, like it's so funny that you brought this up about um, under protection and um, saying other ecosystem because today I saw an example like somebody said he basically got kicked out of a Discord and he said he's a bit traumatized about being banned because due to competition making fake reports. Yeah, I don't know the context, the background, but it's funny like in Web3, like what you alluded to, it can happen. We do get folks from other ecosystems sometimes. Maybe not because they dislike the other ecosystem. Maybe they're just curious to find out about ours. Most of the time is because they're curious to find out about our ecosystem, not because they get kicked out like a refugee. But maybe on like one out of 1,000 or 100, you could get people perhaps got frustrated in other ecosystem. But I'm just saying, in general, we got these interested new guys coming into our system. In that, we yeah, like those people, we could refer to them as we want to protect them, something under the Bear Clan, I guess.
Yeah, no, and like I said, we could, we could spend some time on this now, but it's likely going to take a whole lot of focus on it, right? Because a lot of these words, from adoption to under the protection to refugee status, I think they change shape a little bit in that indigenous context, right? And particularly the protocols for peace and the protocols for accessibility to your voice being heard, right? Change a lot of what we're most familiar with about those words, right? For example, under protection is a reference to your access to voice, right? In these consensus sessions, for example, right? Even though you know your mother isn't Ganyagahaga, right? And you're a visitor maybe in the territory, right? So you're just passing through, right? There's folks like this that say they're under the protection of the Wolf Clan, like Edith, who was born in what would be called Mexico territories, right? But has been up in the Quebec, Eastern Seaboard area, for some time now, right? Over decades, or a decade, at least. And so it's this designation that she uses when she introduces herself in these councils. But the refugee status changes a little bit as well in terms of this access to voice, right? Because it's I think specifically in reference to folks, because there's these baseline protocols for peaceful diplomacy in these matrilineal protocols, right? And so for you to be a refugee of war means that you refuse peace in the first place, right? And so it's even more specific to this your access to voice even after this particular circumstance of both like the normal modern context of refugee status, but I think that peace peaceful that peace context is important as well in terms of maybe even allowing us in these Web3 spaces to soften ourselves to access of to voice, even if whatever the interactions aren't ideal, right? So, and this is with other ecosystems or individuals from other ecosystems, even, right? It just seems like an important nuance, but also the adoption, right, is yeah, it would be interesting to see how that crosses over at all in the Web3 space. But it very well may, right, to help for our mapping, right? Because how else do we know, folks' alignment to all of the things that come with that are loaded into these different siloed spaces, right? Of Web3 often, right? But particularly in stacks, right? Folks that are convicted about privacy, open source, empowered, users, these type of things, um, and then advocates is a whole other learning curve potentially, right? So, yeah, maybe this all makes sense some way, shape, or form down the line. But yeah, I think you're right in the way that you're thinking about it, Hero, because I think I was, thinking along similar lines as well. But maybe it makes more sense for, I don't know, more focused circumstances or examples as well, right? Maybe partnerships or these type of things down the line. I don't know. Yeah, I hope all of that makes at least 70% sense. Thank y'all for enduring, and like I said, Merrick, thank you kindly for bringing that back into the conversation. I know we may have briefly touched on it before in the past, so I'm grateful for getting in a little bit more into the weeds of it today. Relevant.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Unless we decide to go a different direction, I have a curiosity about Haas. Harold, because you know Haas so well, I'm curious if you could describe to and like kind of use him as an example or describe to me how he fits as a bear in Bear Clan. I think there's some question as to like how bears show up or what their role is, um, and Haas is a bear, and you're very familiar with his work. So if that doesn't feel like something you feel comfortable answering, like totally respect that. But yeah, just curious if you have thoughts.
Yeah, no, yeah, maybe not the most comfortable. I think he's trying to speak from his voice, but for my own way, I can speak to these bear-like qualities, right? He's, uh, I think he would be more wolf, right? I think he may have just defaulted to bear after not designating a clan. But that's part of the uncomfortability. But I definitely see wolf and bear and Haas. We have all of these in us. They're supposed to be these deep functional traits, right? That we all have in us, but it's just about naming some of the dominant ones for sake of organizing smoothly together, right? So. I think it's fair to say that Haas can get in his bear bag pretty good, right? I think he's a good wolf, right, in terms of how prolific he is at times. Um, Even has to get into some turtle stuff, right, in terms of understanding the system design that I'm constantly blabbering about. Some of the cosmology stuff that I'm constantly blabbering about that is important to that system design, right? But I would definitely say more wolf and can get into the bear bag in terms of seeing things through, right? And seeing things evolve after being initiated, right? These very fundamental elements of organization that we're able to tap into thanks to this direct dialogue. And so, no, I think we can, point in many different directions into these clans, right? In the different ways people show up in these clans, right? I think there are different types of wolves that maybe aren't so, the way they get into their bear bag is still pretty isolated, right? And that it plays into how prolific they are, how the way that they're prolific as a wolf, because there's different ways of being prolific. You can literally just initiate a bunch of things but never see anything out, and it's still prolific, right? It's still very valuable. It pushes ecosystems forward, right? But it's there are also wolves that once they bite onto something, right, they're not gonna they also don't let go, right, until they see it through, right. And so I think that's the wolves that can go tap into that bear bag a little bit more, right, or maybe have bears around them. Who knows? So this is interesting discussion. So thank you kindly, Ryder. Hopefully that made some sense. Yeah.
I have a tangent. You spoke to it a little bit. I've talked to Merrick about this before. As we settle into the clans we choose, there's this thing that I'm trying to manage within myself. I've grown up. I grew up colorblind originally. Like, I was raised by my parents that all people were equal. I was their cute little panda, their black and white baby, and blah blah blah. And the way that I saw the world when I was young and what that did made things really confusing. And then all the trauma throughout my family's lineage made it hard for me to like access my identity or know what it was. A lot of my family white past, I guess you could say, is kind of like the cultural lingo that most folks know. And so I lost a lot of like my heritage and stuff, and grew up around a lot of folks who identify as white. And there's this thing that happened when I would end up in Indigenous spaces. I would be elated, just over the moon every time, and felt like I was home all of a sudden because everything made sense in those spaces. I didn't have words for it. I'd be around my friends who'd be talking about not appropriating stuff. And all their comments about appropriation made it so that I didn't actually like look into my own Indigenous like background. I was afraid to because of what everyone said. And if you got to do that, you got to like throw out DNA. And then I'm afraid of sending DNA places because I believe in eugenics too. And yeah, so with all of that and trying to like hold that reality, that's like a big thing for me. Those thoughts and all those little moments, and holding that and trying to pick turtle, wolf, and bear. I've been sitting with this idea for a really long time, since like the very beginning. I've been sitting very carefully, to the extent that I've like grown plants, named them these things, and sat with them and observed them, and I'm like being in relationship with them, trying to like look for cues, because that's the thing, is this Indigenous stuff like it really hits close to home for me, and I don't have a whole lot of guidance or outlets or resources, and I don't feel safe flippantly like just choosing one. And something that's come through and unpacking over the last few months is just like noticing that, like you said it, there's turtle, wolf, and bear in all of us. And what's been really, really noticeable for me is that mine are seasonal. Whatever it is, it's seasonal, and there's cycles within myself. And I've been noticing how out of alignment and out of pattern I've been living with like time and nature and seasons and etc. And it made me realize that like, yeah, I resonate with bear, and then it feels like it's shifting in season to another. And this turtle, wolf, and bear, this is something that I'm gonna like be sitting with for a full year in all seasons, like reflecting on. So I feel like I can show up and participate in roles as a player, experimenting with technology, but I'm not fully grounded in what we're doing because it hits really deep for me, and it requires like a lot of time and reflection for me to feel like I'm engaging authentically with this technology. And yeah, bridging that. I don't know, I'm like here for like peace and stuff. and I'm trying to be in right relationship with myself, with others, the land, and technology. And I feel a little bit of discomfort, not having a lot of intentionality around using like turtle, wolf, and bear for myself. So it's something that I wanted to like share, that I've been sitting with and thinking about, and like kind of talking a little bit with some folks. But yeah, I know that we've got me listed as a female bear, and that feels, I felt good, but it like, and I'm ready to experiment and tinker and help with processes as we work through these things. But I can even feel myself shifting internally to something else seasonally, as the weather changes, as my motivations change, as I don't know, I guess I'm looking at my, like, how I want to map out my life and live my life over the course of a year in relationship to season. So I'm feeling mind shifting. Yeah, that's all.
No, thank you kindly, Elo. No, it's beautiful that then when we sit with things that deeply. I think it's ultimately the goal, right? Is to engender folks to play and tinker, as you're saying. Not just with the tooling, but some of these concepts and how they apply to how we organize ourselves, particularly, right? And it's a beautiful way to reemphasize temporary phase of all of this, right? Directly coming from the Longhouse's own approaches to these things when working with, folks that, to your point, right, have a hard time identifying with their own indigenous or original peoples' histories, right? And so, no matter what, geography or background you come from. So, but this is particularly something that we saw with them in terms of their approach with these Quebecers, right? They have a big role in these Turo Wampum dialogues on the ground there in Ganawage. And so, yeah, that temporary phase is to just reemphasize to folks, right, that this is not concrete stuff, and that this is for you to seriously contemplate these things, as you mentioned, right? And it's yeah, no, thank you kindly, Elo. I'll leave it there. I think you did everything justice. Thank you. But uh, yeah. Hopefully there could be more intention, from respective lenses, right? As our dialogue with the Longhouse continues, right? There'll always be folks at different paces, right, to that point of mapping, and there'll be self-similarity in some of our paces, but there will be hard distinctions as well. And so that's the beauty of some of the resilience that comes out of this as well, right? Is being able to relate, but then also being able to see what everybody brings to the commons, right? But yeah, no, thank you kindly, Yellow.
Maybe I'll speak to Alo as well. I think it's totally like natural, right? To not know exactly where you are. Like the other day, I keep thinking I'm a bear, but actually maybe I am turning out to be more like a wolf for whatever reason. Like from the things I like, the more I learn, so my interpretation changed and my understanding changed. So I'm now feeling a little bit different. But even if I understood everything, like I feel like some of the things we haven't had hands-on um, experience enough yet. I think the more we and you actually um, do some of these and practice some of these things, everybody, including myself and you, will probably start to realize which clan you feel more at ease with, um, And like say, even if I just bring in a real world sort of um, how do you call it, example, like sometimes when you grow up, you keep thinking like when you're 20, you're gonna be like this, you're gonna love, you're gonna work in certain type of industry, you study certain subject, and that's what you're gonna do in the future. But actually, a lot of the time, that's not how people turn out to be, even if they totally think it's gonna go that way. But actually, life takes you a different way. Um, so I think from I feel like it is perfectly normal to feel like what you feel.
Yeah, no, I can speak to this, go ahead, Ella.
I was gonna say thank you to both of y'all. Sorry, frog in my throat. But yeah, thank you for that. It's grounding just naming that. It's weird until you use it and get a feel for it too. That's totally legit.
Yeah, I mean, and some of the things you were speaking to in terms of the fluidity of the clans makes sense as well, right? In relating it to seasons, or relating it to even particular, cycles throughout the day, right? There's some overlap in, some of the clan function and traits and some of the Nawa or Mexico territory, native cosmologies that we've been exposed to in terms of instead of a clock, dictating the day, they had this very keen understanding of the different waves that are going on throughout the day, right? The magnetic field of the Earth, and the times of day where you're are best for reflection, and the times of day that are best for action, activity, and then the best times of day that are for creativity. Right? These were this was a lot of in terms of the day-to-day flow of those indigenous cultures, those native cultures on the ground there. That I think can speak to some of the clans are such deep, almost primordial elements of organization that it can speak to all these different things, right? Whether it is seasons, or whether it is even particular energies of the day. But yeah, no, I think everything you said made some sense. I love. Thank you kindly for bringing it to the table, and not holding back through that library. Yeah.
It makes you human. Like maybe if I turn that around, maybe it would be strange if we didn't feel that way, if we didn't have fluctuations of different uh, seasons throughout the day or throughout the year. Maybe that's we should be feeling like that. If we are not, then we are not. We are more like a robot than programmed, but we are not programmed.
The AI test. Are you altered by the seasons?
Oh yeah, no, it's a beautiful thing. And, some of what we've been looking forward to with the clan system, right? The lack of prescriptiveness, right? It's one of the easiest potholes to fall into when not just thinking about structures of governance, but structures of organization. Is the pitfall of categorization that come from conventional institutions, corporate structures, and so I think this is something that is going to come up over and over again as we continue to learn together this particular clan design. Yeah, it's a beautiful dialogue. Thank you kindly, y'all. Yeah, I mean, it feels good hearing some of that buddy system flow got spoken to, and maybe some good points of clarity, Hero, that you can take down and maybe look back on even. Thank you kindly, Merrick, for touching on this, and you guys holding it down at the top of the meeting. I don't want to hold folks longer just because I was fairly late, so. But I do want to leave the floor open for any other lingering things on folks' minds that are important to coming weeks in these things. Anything folks want to bring to the floor. Merrick, we spoke to some things before this session in a meeting that I feel terribly bad about bombarding, but I felt fairly organic. But yeah, I don't know if you want to speak to that, or it sounds like maybe you already did to some extent. But maybe we can incorporate this into the dialogue as well. But yeah, I think the floor open.
Yeah. Please don't feel bad about coming to that meeting, man. We were very happy to have you. Parts of that meeting, I mean, we talked about a lot. Did you have anything in particular in mind that you think it was particularly pertinent? Because I mean, I could go to lots of different places from what we were talking about, but I'd like to weave in what you were thinking about if you had something from that meeting in particular.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe the most relevant thing would be, potential clan design dialogue, right, directly with the Longhouse, right? And we've had some advocates Longhouse dialogues before, and so we were speaking to this a little bit in the meeting beforehand, right, Merrick, about lining something up for folks, and maybe this is a good time to expose folks and coordinate folks for any potential dialogue, and bring them into how we were thinking about maybe some of some at least. The beginnings of testing of the tooling can lend itself to that dialogue being focused on both sides, right? Some questions from the advocate side that are relevant to things going on, right, in our tooling and application of this clan design, and some things coming back from the Longhouse in that way, in a fairly focused way, right? So, yeah, these are some of what we spoke to. I think that was relevant.
Yeah. So I guess just first talking about like this whole clan design system, and this is just to the room, has been built in dialogue and in collaboration, right, with teachings direct from the Longhouse. And so now that we're actually playing with this clan design a little bit and stepping into it and seeing how it feels for us, looking at setting up some like another dialogue session with the Longhouse, where we could bring up us as advocates, what are we feeling as we step in it, as we play with these clan designs, and to get some feedback. The Longhouse is, I gotta say, for sure one of the best places to go for feedback. You go and you just talk a little bit about whatever we've been doing, and you're pretty much guaranteed to get something really good reflected back, coming from the other side there of that two-row wampum. But how do folks here feel about maybe speaking up in a session with the Longhouse? If we can talk a little about like what we're trying to do or what we're doing with these clan designs, and if does anyone maybe feel like they have something they would want to bring up with the Longhouse about how we're feeling with these designs, like with our own interaction with these systems. I know myself. I do. I have a few things. I was speaking to Angel from the Life Givers Nation yesterday about setting one of them up, and I'm gonna reach out and set up a dialogue, and focusing too on that point of what Harold brought out about us having something to focus on. Now that we're actually working with these clan system designs, that'll be something for us to kind of anchor to when we're talking with the Longhouse, and focus on, so that the clan system is something the Longhouse knows about, and the clan system is something that we know about in Stacks Advox as well. Particularly in the sense where there's a lot going on in Web3, right? So not all of that is always, the Longhouse is not up to date with everything going on in Web3. Mostly what I think they're familiar with is what comes through our dialogues. So having something like the clan design system, the clan system to talk about in this dialogue would be a good way for us to have, something to focus on, so that our communications can be anchored to something. So yeah, I don't know if anyone has I'll open up the floor to anyone in the room who might either have something that they would want to bring up there, or maybe just feelings about bringing things up there. Yeah, I'll open it up.
Yeah, you mind sharing a little bit more about what exactly that is, and what date that'll be?
Yeah, we don't have a hard date yet. Usually it's been on Fridays in the afternoon, like afternoon Pacific time, kind of like 1 or 2. I'm not saying for sure that's when this time would be, but that's kind of been uh, what's what we've done so far. Would that maybe work for you, Isaiah? Um,
Yeah, I could try to make that work.
cool. Yeah. How about other folks?
I have a couple things. This could be for another time, but I'm curious about the meaning and role of the drum that I see Stuart hitting. So that can be another time, but I wanted to get that off my chest. So I wanted to hear about that, and maybe I could even just ask him about that. Because if I don't get an answer from you or Harold, then that's something I want to ask them. And then I think it would be a huge service to that dialogue if I knew, or we knew, where they were at in terms of this platform, like if they'd been shown recently, or if we could give them a little run through of, so that when people refer to what our turtle wolf bear might look like, that they understand that we're like using tools on a shared platform or something, like just some sort of orientation to this space, if not all things Web3 or even Stacks, just understanding that we're like using Discord. I wonder how possible that is to just like orient.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. I mean, we could even do, if we call this dialogue, we could even do just like a little demo, maybe, a little illustration with some of the tools, to showcase a little bit about what we're talking about. I mean, they've seen bits and pieces throughout, but nothing, I think, coherent. I know we've been kind of introducing some of the Discord tooling to the Life Givers Nation, but there hasn't been a whole lot of take up there. I think there'd have to be a lot of, teaching to onboard those folks. But yeah, this idea of like having a demo, that's a fantastic idea. Oh, and to the drum question, I don't have an answer. Maybe Harold does, but I think that'd be a great question too. I'd love to hear the answer for that as well.
No, yeah. I mean, there's this language from the Longhouse we hear often, which is that we're all songs, and we get our songs from our mother, right? And so I'd imagine the drum has a big, a big role in some of that language, right? Also this, we all get our hearts from our mother, right? Even the Longhouse will reference this. This biological aspect of it, right? How does the blood first start pumping in your first cell, right? As you're developing in your mother's womb, it's like, oh, it's from your mother's heart, right? And this gets tied back to the the moon, right? Grandmother Moon, Yonki Sota Garakwa, and it's astrophysics and this almost heart-like function, a heart-pumping function of in relation to our atmosphere, regenerating our atmosphere, giving the Earth its atmosphere in the first place, right? And so I think there's a lot to the drum in that regard, right? And it comes up in the Moon teachings in that particular context of its heart-like function, right? And so it gives us this relationship all the way up to Jaguntaze, or Sky Woman herself, this spiral design, right, of regenerative, sustainability. Right? So yeah, I think that it might fall along something like that. But no, of course, you should ask the Longhouse as well. Uh, you know, uh, the floor is still open, right, Merrick? Thank you kindly. That was a beautiful introduction to, you know, the clan design anchoring some of the dialogue with the Longhouse, right? I love that language for it. And yeah, I think the question was something along the lines of, what are your, if any folks can think of already some feelings, or thank you kindly, Isaiah, for expressing the interest. That's beautiful to see as well from anybody. And yeah, I think Merrick, you're correct in some of the timing that windows of time, even without a solid date, we can kind of expect from previous dialogues and such. So yeah, thank you kindly. Yeah, yeah, it's huge. But yeah, yeah. If there's nothing more, if you're holding back as usual, I understand it. But no, thank you kindly for opening up the floor in that way, Merrick. We can leave it open as well a little bit longer, but understand if folks have been here a while already. But thank you for giving us that brief summary, Merrick. I think it's going to suffice, at least for the folks here. And I don't know, maybe we can, just reach out if you need any help coordination wise, right? I'm sure myself, Ryder, other folks here would be of help in terms of facilitating anything in this time, right? Or when it does happen, right? So, thank you, Merrick. But yeah. Uh,
One idea that comes to mind is if theoretically this is going to happen on a Friday, that it might be nice to have a discussion on a Thursday, potentially leading up to it, to kind of gather the minds and just kind of prepare to enter that space together. I could see that being really beneficial. Maybe answering any questions as to like where we're going to be, what kind of space we're entering. And I could see it being a good opportunity to just kind of energize each other around coming in with a purpose to speak or to be present with the Longhouse. So just a thought there.
No. Thank you kindly, Rodney. Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I think all of that would engender the best, coordination efforts, which are important for, maximizing the participation. But even if we do fall short of, what may be ideal for participation in the dialogue, right? As with other dialogues, right? I think we all, take something back to the advocates who maybe weren't able to make it, right? Through and it gets implemented in the system design somehow, it gets engendered in the culture somehow. And it's just as valid, right, for the folks that are that can make it scheduling wise, time zone wise, interest wise, right? So yeah. Uh, thank you kindly, Ryder. Yeah, I'm down for aiming for a Thursday coordinations of some kind. Yeah.
The request, which I put in the chat, Merrick, was that it be OBS recorded so that we could have it faster and also like kind of nest it maybe in our meeting notes. And I'm asking that because I don't assume it's asking that much more labor, but I could understand how it could be because I don't do that kind of recording. But I imagine that would just like require consent ahead of time. So just if it's a possibility, if it could be a part of the original reach. Yeah.
Yeah. So in general, when dealing with the Longhouse, it's everything is recorded and everything is public. That's very much the Longhouse does that in all of their dealings with almost pretty much anyone that they're dealing with. They have it in public, and that's to avoid any sense of corruption of behind closed doors type meetings. So on that level, I'm sure that's fine. On a more technical level, I guess a question for you, Harold. One is, can we use your Zoom meeting room that you've got set up from that we've used previously? And then two, can the recording from that be uploaded pretty quickly? Or would it make sense for me to do an OBS recording over top of that, just have it up quicker? That'd be my question for you, Harold.
The Zoom meeting room?
Yeah.
Or, yeah. Let's do it. Yeah.
All right, cool.
Just get with me. Maybe we have to, make a new event or what have you. Make sure that there's no, mess ups with the address or what have you. But yeah, of course, let's get down.
Cool. And I've never actually hosted the Zoom meeting room, but can the recording from that be uploaded to YouTube pretty quickly?
Yes, it usually can, unless there's some corruption with the file or something that can happen, but hopefully it doesn't. Yeah, it can be done pretty quickly.
Cool.
Hey, Merrick, was your question basically, were you basically fielding clarifying questions that we could pose to the Longhouse about actually using the clan tooling? Is that what I heard?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Because I think something that I was kind of pondering about, and I think I've been talking to Trey a little bit about this too, is I was just theoretically wondering how the Longhouse would see resource distribution going through using the clan tooling, say the wolves, right, have their nose to the ground in the community and possibly see that a project or journey or even just an individual that's doing something useful to the community or helpful to the commons needs resources. I would see the wolves as the figuring out that, and then maybe lodging request for resources to the clan system, and then just that's kind of as far as I've gotten. I was just wondering maybe if the Longhouse would have any ideas on how maybe a theoretical scenario would play out between the clans, and them reaching consensus on actually allowing for resources to be funneled towards different journeys or projects or people.
Fantastic question. Yeah. Thank you, Fred. Actually, Harold, do you have any ideas on that one? I know that might tie in a little bit to that Figma with the clan structure and how the clan, the land is held by the different clans and the resources distributed by the clan mothers. Do you have any ideas off the top of your head? Or we could also, I think it's a great idea to bring that one to the Longhouse direct.
No, yeah, I think you're right, Merrick. Right, it's just a general oversimplification, but of what is a whole lot of arduous consensus, I'd imagine. But it's we have a means for making that less arduous with these protocols. But yeah, I think most of it is wrapped up into this matrilineal councils, right? And governance structures being in place, right? And that's pretty much how we're approaching, journeys, right? To the point of whenever there is need for governance, right? Folks would be able to plug right in. But yeah, the actual flow, right? Of even before we get to journeys, right? Of deciding on some of that, right? right, would, could ultimately be one of the things we put through the clan design and tooling, right? But then means that we've had these protocols that are considering matrilineal structures that have already, looked at whether or not this is something we all agree to or not, right? And so, yeah, I think this is, something that's expressed in that diagram, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see the Longhouse's description of it, right? But yeah, I'm sure it'll be something along the lines of having some type of protocol for decision making, right? Which ultimately what you're talking about in terms of budgeting or funding. So yeah, those are just my initial thoughts, but yeah, beautiful question to ask, and just to get the wheels turning collectively, right? Between us all, right? That and between us and the Longhouse, right, is a very specific space that we can, a whole lot of innovation can come out of, I think, right, in questions like that. So, yeah. Thank you kindly, Fred. And yeah, and Merrick, thank you kindly for again posing those questions to the floor, and just getting folks interested in coming whenever that dialogue does happen. I was I know that those are going to be some quite a bit of focus needed for those coordination efforts as they come along. So yeah, it's been a beautiful session, y'all. Yeah, if there's anything else lingering on folks' mind or that we forgot to touch, please bring it up now. And yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. It was a great meeting of the minds. I really appreciated all the perspectives and voices. I saw Fred unmute, and also I wrote a question for you in the chat, Merrick, that maybe we could discuss publicly or async.
Yeah, my bad. I'm like still thinking about this, so I don't really want to hold people back. So Trey, from what you're thinking about it, like we don't have like the we don't actually have we're still building this, so we don't actually have like a matrilineal council to ensure that resource distribution would be going towards areas that uphold like those matrilineal values. It would be, I'm assuming, like the Turtle Clan's responsibility to observe dialogue between Wolf and Bear Clan on resource distribution, and ultimately be one of the final voices that comes in and helps like distinguish whether or not the area in question for resource distribution is actually something that should be prioritized in terms of upholding that overall value. I guess like making sure it aligns with the value of our community.
No, yeah. I think that allow us to be fairly impressed with that particular flow that you described. But that is even if right now we at least have the ability to test it, right? We're a little bit closer than we were in the past into not having those type of council flows. But we could at least, before we get into this dialogue later in the week with the Longhouse or whenever it can happen, we can start testing in this way, right? And it will be some of our first, applications of the system design with the tooling, and some of our first attempts at seeing what those matrilineal structures, how they flow like, and how they feel for us. So it's that exactly what you described, right? That clan design in decision making processes and protocols. That's the flow that you described. And so, that whatever we have at the time, right, is what we'll use, and whatever shape it's in as well, right? Because there are some nuances to there's some nuances to the protocol that maybe will come up in the dialogue. That can help us along with the testing or how we're testing. But one of those nuances that we're thinking of is, the formalization flow, right, may look a little bit different for some time as for a good reason to give some authenticity to the autonomous matrilineal processes, right? Like, so you can have formalization processes for the, that are fairly separate, right? Until there's like, okay, we kind of trust you guys to sit in consensus with, and so these are some of the nuances that may make the testing a little bit different than when it's a little bit more beyond testing, or the testing grows a little bit more. But some of the things that myself and Merrick were discussing, that may be important, not just for our side of learning these protocols, but also on the Longhouse specific side, right? Longhouse effort specific side, where those are some of the things that we're just learning, as those folks learn the clan design as well. And so, but this shouldn't change testing so much, and depending on when that dialogue happens and what is actually being used for testing, because it can be mock issues that but it could also be real issues that facilitate some more, hopefully some more productive testing, right? When you're actually using it more seriously.
On that note, I'll share that Juliet and I met as the female wolf clan, and then afterwards I talked to Harold kind of about like expectations and about wolf clan and reps and all this stuff, and he kind of, I'm just gonna, in my own words, I feel like he kind of encouraged the use of the tooling, and yeah, I'm just excited to again kind of go back into it. So we're gonna meet again on Thursday morning, and then I assume we're gonna lodge an issue, and so we're just gonna kind of work that out and work alongside the tooling, because it's a little different, right? When you can meet in real time, you don't need the tooling as much to discuss, and there's only two of us, so it's a little easier to schedule. And we're wolves, so we're just like on it, or we're quick to want to meet up and do things. So that's all to say that we're gonna intentionally work alongside the tooling while we work real time to see if we can. We're not forcing it. There's been some discussion, and we're gonna see if we can deliberate on like and materialize an issue from the kind of content that we've been discussing. So yeah, that's just something I wanted to point out. So it'll probably be like a real issue, not a fake issue, but it'll also just be an experiment, and it'll be like trying out the tooling with everything we've been talking about. So you can look forward to that.
Yeah. Hopefully that makes sense too, Fred. Right? It's like Ryder said, we've been trying to get folks to pick up some of this clan design in just this recent week. Really, encouraging it more than ever. But there's a flow, right? It's wolves, right? That then they initiate, and then the other clans get involved, and we don't have representatives right now, right? Which I think is a big distinction too, right? Into the way the tooling takes shape, the way the flows take shape, how quickly they take shape as well, right? Because there's a whole lot more responsibility once you've opted into representing the voices of other folks. So, this is what we're still encouraging in the meantime, right? It's far from a clan design, right? So, in its complete form, for all these different reasons, right? The lack of representatives, some of the things that Ryder mentioned, right? And so we still have a whole lot to learn from these dialogues that Merrick is speaking to, right? But it also means that we have something to anchor ourselves in, as Merrick also spoke to, when we're in dialogue, to think of, have in mind when we're in dialogue, and to make the dialogue tangible in innovation, right? All of this is ultimately connected to, Harvard.